back. You're listening to Houston Real Estate Radio. I'm your host, Shannon Register, and every week we bring you news and information you can use on your next real estate transaction. All right, this segment we're going to be talking with Judge Robert Eckels. He is the president of the Texas Central Railway. They're a private company, and they have the proposal out there for the HighSpeed rail to go between Dallas and Houston. So that's a very exciting project that we're going to be talking about, and it definitely works into housing because this could definitely affect housing trends and where people want to live if they want to take the high-speed rail. So it's interesting.
It's a very exciting project, Shannon. I'm glad to be here this morning to talk about it.
So tell us about the company, Texas Central Railway.
We are a private company, newly created company, just to promote this project between Houston and the Dallas-Fort Worth region. It is a 240-mile segment that would use the Japanese Shinkansen system, the fifth-generation Shinkansen system, the safest train in the world, 50 years with zero loss of life accidents, but also an incredibly fast train. It runs 205 miles an hour. It would take less than 90 minutes to go from Houston to downtown Dallas.
That would cut down on commutes, wouldn't it?
cut down on commute time, much more user-friendly than the airports and much more reliable than the highway.
So there was a proposal back in, I guess, the 80s to do a project similar to this, and the Texas legislature killed that project. What are some of the differences between the two?
Well, I was actually in the legislature when we passed that bill. We created a high-speed rail authority, and the biggest difference between that project and this one is that was a state project. Okay. It was created. It was not funded by the state, but created as a state-sponsored project. Mm-hmm. They had competition between the French and the Germans, who are the only two rail companies, the TGV and the ICE trains that run in France and Germany and have now expanded through most of Europe. Today, the French actually won the concession to build that project, and the money could not be put together to make it happen. Okay. It again was a state-sponsored project. We are very different in that we're private. We have no grants, no operating subsidies from the state. We're not seeking grants or operating subsidies from the state. In fact, some people always say, well, we don't believe that. You're just trying to get the camel's nose under the tent, and then you're going to have to get the state to bail you out. And I'm still a Republican. No, the state won't bail us out. If we don't make it, our investors will lose their money. But we do think this is a very strong market. There are 7 million people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, close to 7 million people in the Houston area. It is two really big markets, big economies. We sometimes take for granted how big the economy of our region is. Yeah. Combined with that Dallas-Fort Worth region, we really drive the economy of this state. It's important to the rural communities that the Houston and Dallas regions are strong. The Port of Houston carries most of the agricultural products in and out of the state of Texas. The petrochemical products. The Dallas region is a big international shipping center as well. Mm-hmm. Tremendous ties into the global economy. So two big markets that have very limited access. During the evacuations of the Katrina Rita time, people will remember the traffic backup on I-45, and It reminds folks that it's really only 2 lanes going to Dallas. It's not the 8 lanes you see as you go through Conroe or the Woodlands today. It's a much narrower roadway, and it doesn't take much, a truck wreck or an ice storm or a big rain to even slow that down and make it go from a 4-hour drive to 5 or 6 hours a day, and by 2035, it's projected to be the average drive time up about 6 hours.
Wow. So what's I know there's some small airlines like Southwest that'll run jets back and forth, and the main thing is that it's going to be easier to take the train than it would be to take like a Southwest jet. Sure.
I would probably argue that Southwest would take issue with them being a small airline. They're a big carrier, and I'm actually whatever their priority member because I do fly that airline so much. It's a great airline, and I love Southwest. But we're a little different niche. It's a much friendlier, more comfortable ride than on a Southwest airplane. You don't have TSA to begin with. Mm-hmm. You've got Wi-Fi. You can get up and walk around. It's very smooth. You don't have to worry about a delay from your flight coming out of Houston or Dallas because a plane was delayed in St. Louis or the weather was bad somewhere on the other end. It is a record in Japan with less than 1 minute.
So weather does not affect the train.
The weather, a hurricane or something like that, they'd slow it down.
But rain and sleet,
snow would be running 205 miles an hour, planning to leave every 30 minutes. And again, in the Japan market and in Taiwan, where they run this same train, they have less than a 30-second delay with a train leaving every 6 minutes from Tokyo Station in the peak rush hour. So
it does slow down with rain instead or it still goes 350?
No, it still goes 205 205 miles an hour in typical rainstorms.
Okay.
Again, a hurricane with really high winds that might impact the operation of the train.
Hopefully we won't have those very often.
For hurricane evacuation, it would be nice.
Yeah, get everybody up north. Okay. So you're planning on having 3 stops along the track?
Downtown Houston, the model today has a stopping inner city Houston, downtown area, from probably the post office or Hardy Yard, somewhere in that vicinity downtown. A stop in between that would serve the Bryan College Station area, probably 15 or 20 miles to the east of Bryan College Station, but with a shuttle that could deliver people to that market, and then in downtown Dallas. I think in the end you'd probably see a collector-distributor system develop over time in the north part of Harris County and perhaps in some of the other towns in between. That's not our current model, but I think intuitively that makes a lot of sense.
And so it's 90 minutes to get from Houston to Dallas.
A little less.
A little bit
less
less.
than 90 minutes. It's a...
That is exciting. And, once you include the time of parking at the airport and going through TSA, it probably would
The
better.
ridership on commercial airlines is down on the short-haul flights by 50% since 9/11. Literally 1 million fewer people flying between Houston and Dallas today than flew before the attacks of 9/11. And the train is much easier for security purposes. You can't turn it into a WMD and crash it into the Chase Tower or something downtown. It's on the track. And even if someone were to get into the cabin and try to take over the train, it has also got a central control system. So if it's off of its schedule, the main control system would just turn it off.
And you have multiple trains running on the same rail or different rails?
We would have multiple trains running on the same rail in the same direction. We would have 2 rails between Houston and Dallas, one northbound, one southbound, and the trains would not be ever sharing the same track going in opposite directions. You'd have one track going north, one track coming south. Okay.
And you've got to figure out exactly where this is going to go. And I know you're doing a lot of studies and trying to figure that out. And you estimate it maybe 18 months to 2 years to get all of that hashed out.
The Federal Railroad Administration is doing a study. We're looking primarily at existing rights-of-way for rail lines, utility lines, roadways between Houston and Dallas. We think at least half, maybe up to 70% of the project could be in or adjacent to existing rights-of-way. We're working with the Federal Railroad Administration on that. They are actually running the environmental impact statement process.
Okay.
And the safety standard process, we're actually paying for it. So when people see the FRA out there, it's not their tax dollars paying for that. They have hired people and they send us a bill, and we pay for that as part of this process, regulatory process we go through with the federal government.
And this is going to be the first train of its kind in the United States.
It is, and it's interesting because people don't really understand the transformational nature of this technology. That it's a very small footprint coming through their communities. It's maybe 40 feet wide if we're elevated. If not, it's a county. If we're on the grade, it's a county road, 100 feet wide. It's not a big impact on the regions it goes through.
And it goes very fast, so you do have to have the track protected. It'll have fencing.
The track is completely isolated from any other tracks, any other railroads.
No one can derail it or mess with it.
It's isolated from roads. We don't have cars crossing. We were talking earlier, when I was a kid, I used to put pennies on the track by my dad's office over there off Westheimer and watch the train crush them. I couldn't afford quarters, but we'd do a penny every once in a while. And this track, you can't have a kid get out on the railroad track, and because at 200 miles an hour, it's there before you see it. It's just very fast, and the track is fenced. It's isolated. It is protected from people getting on it or from cars or trucks or other vehicles crossing the tracks.
Would there be any tunnels?
There could be. We don't anticipate tunnels. I hope not, because they're very expensive.
Yeah.
Mostly elevated or at grade with the roads going over under the train, but at least 100 miles of it will be elevated because of wetlands or other things in the way of the train. So it would be elevated again on a very small footprint. Quiet, very quiet. They have the Japanese standards that are much quieter than the United States. Electric wires up above. It's a cool train.
All right, we'll be right back here on Houston Real Estate Radio. I've got a couple of other questions I want to ask you, so we'll be right back.